TVC Sport Desk.
Let's come back to the trending story in the world of sports now. That's the crisis involving Russia and Ukraine. It should be a political conversation, but of course, sport is at the forefront of that story. And a lot of concern as sports stars have continued to get involved in the conversation. You could see pictures there on your screen of players getting themselves involved in the conversation, from West Ham United displaying support for Ukraine to the fans calling for the end to the war. And it brings to the question, is sport supposed to be at the forefront of conversation like this? Well, according to the IOC Charter, that's Article 50, sport is not supposed to be used as a tool for advocating any propaganda, any religious sentiment, any political belief. But we're seeing sports speaking so vocal about the crisis in Russia and Ukraine. Well, of course, let's look at some of these reactions. Then we'll be joined by a legal practitioner, Barrister Steve NWABUEZE, who is a sports legal expert. He will be telling us how Russia could at least get some relief from all of these sanctions. Remember that Russia have been heavily sanctioned by the IOC, by FIFA, by UEFA. As a matter of fact, they've been thrown out of the World Cup. They've been thrown out of European competitions. And their athletes have been told by IOC that they cannot compete in any sports events. But of course, the athletes and officials of Russia are now seeking to approach the Court of Arbitration for Sport to seek a redress on some of these sanctions, denying them the opportunity to participate in their sport. Barrister, thank you for joining us on TVC Sport Desk. I'm sure you've been following the conversation around the Russia-Ukraine crisis and how sports has been vocal in all of this. Do you think Russia has a case in this situation?
A very good evening, first of all, Emmanuel, and thank you for having me. Good evening to your distinguished viewers. To answer your question, Russia indeed has a right. They have an inalienable fundamental right to seek redress before the Court of Arbitration for Sports. Why do I say so? I've looked through the entire gamut of the regulations governing FIFA, from the football procedural rules down to the FIFA Code of Ethics, the FIFA Disciplinary Code. I cannot see any provision that the Russia Football Federation has violated, which has culminated in this suspension or ban or whatever you want to call it. So looking at it strictly from a legal viewpoint, I'm sure there's a lot of emotion involved. A lot of people are reacting emotionally to what is happening in Ukraine rather than rationally. Apologies for that, but that is also part and parcel of the game. But when you look at the regulations, like I said, there's nothing. No shred of offense has been committed by the Russian Football Federation. Now, you look at the players who also make up the Russian national team, the players who also ply their trade in the Russian league and the rest of Europe, who are also reeling from this, the after effects of this whole thing. They say proverbially that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. Has anybody even bothered to think that these players also have rights? Under Article 6.1 of the European Convention on Human Rights, there are certain inalienable fundamental rights, one of which is that every person, everyone, every athlete shall be entitled to a fair hearing, a fair trial within a reasonable time. Now, I've been looking at the trend of the events. It was more or less than 48 hours. First of all, we saw a clamor for Russia to be banned, Russia to suffer some kind of punitive measure. And about 48 hours later, the sledgehammer landed and they said, oh, that Russia has now been banned from playing the World Cup and from participating in any FIFA organized competition. UEFA followed suit. Now, I was also reading an article shortly before we came online to see that even the IOC and some other sports governing bodies have also followed suit. Now, Article 57 of the CAS Code vests jurisdiction on the Court of Arbitration for Sports. So the Court of Arbitration for Sports has jurisdiction, first of all, to determine any procedural issues arising from this. What are the likely procedural issues? FIFA here has turned itself to the complainants, the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Why do I say so? There has been no offense that Russia has been charged with. From a footballing point of view, from a sporting point of view, the athletes who also make up the federation or the confederation of the Russia Football Federation have also not been charged with any offense. So on what basis are you doing this? Now, that is also a frontal violation of Article 6, Sub 1 of the European Convention on Human Rights, and also a breach of FIFA's procedural rules, because when you make a ban like that, when you place a suspension like that, it presupposes, first of all, that there's a justiciable controversy or dispute that was submitted to you. Now, looking at FIFA's regulations, FIFA ordinarily should be acting as an arbiter. You have about 3 judicial bodies, of course, apart from the FIFA, the Dispute Resolution Chamber, and the Player Status Committee. The 3 main judicial bodies are the FIFA Ethics Committee, the FIFA Disciplinary Committee, and the FIFA Appeals Committee. Now, when you ban a federation, it presupposes that a complaint was submitted to you, that there was a determination, and that an opportunity was given to the person who has been banned or who has been punished to defend him or herself. Now, there's nowhere, nowhere, of course, you have been following the news, of course, nowhere where Russia has been invited or given the opportunity. I think that's clear their
position. Yes. Well, Barrister, let's get to a very important point of this discussion. You have mentioned that FIFA in itself is acting as a complainant, as the petitioner, and as well as the arbiter in all of this. Let's have a look at the FIFA Code of Ethics, the laws of the game, in which that equipment, that's the way you have it on the screen, Law 4 of the FIFA laws of the game. Equipment must not have any political, religious, or personal slogan, statement, or images. Players must not reveal undergarments that show political, religious, personal slogans, statements, or images, or advertising other than the manufacturer's logo. We've seen across the world where players and teams are flying the colors and messages about this crisis, and FIFA has not activated sanctions against them according to the law. Is FIFA being sympathetic to a certain Ukraine in all of this, or FIFA is not doing itself any favor by completely ignoring its own rules because of some sentimental reasons?
All right, I'm going to be very blunt here. FIFA has lost complete control of the situation. First, it started with the ban, and now everybody is putting up messages, more or less appealing to emotion. So there's no rational justification, first of all. And when you look at even the UEFA statutes, I think Articles 1 and 3A or thereabouts, also make provisions for religious and political neutrality. So if your athletes are now coming out to wear Ukrainian flags and everything, it simply means that you, who is supposed to be the arbiter, you have lost complete control and you have descended into the arena of dispute. Which is quite baffling, because this is also the same FIFA that would ban football federations from becoming member associations because of political interferences from home governments. Kenya, I think some days back,
Kenya is banned,
Yes, so, and when you look at it, you see there's a contradiction.
As well as Zimbabwe.
Correct. So now, and you are now coming out to make a political statement, because what FIFA is doing is a political statement. I'm looking at the overall legal ramifications of all of this, and I think it is important to also mention that there are also people, individual athletes, who will be affected by this. Their means of livelihood will be taken away. Some of them who have signed endorsement deals with some sports brands who are already looking forward to the World Cup not be able to give the desired visibility to those brands so that they will be able to earn their money. Now, those brands will most likely sue the players for the money or the remuneration they've collected. Now, what do these players do? Of course, they have a right to approach the Court of Arbitration for Sports. Article 6, Sub 1 of the ECHR makes mention of everyone. So I would imagine that some kind of representative action at the very minimum or a class action by the Russian players will suffice at this point. At the very minimum, they should approach the Court of Arbitration for Sports and get what we call a provisional measure. That provisional measure is more or less like a stay of execution that let the Court of Arbitration stay action on this pending determination of the substantive matter.
Okay, Barrister, it's always nice to have you, but of course this conversation will continue as the events unfold. We've only dwelled on the football part. The IOC part is also there. There's also the IOC Article 50 of the IOC Charter, which also forbids the kind of demonstration of political, religious, or racial propaganda that is not permitted at any Olympic site, venue, or other areas. Russian athletes and Belarusian athletes were almost thrown out of the Paralympic Games, if not that they will be competing as neutrals. We'll talk about this probably before the week runs out. Thank you so much, Barrister Steve NWABUEZE, who is a specialist and a legal practitioner in sport matters. Thank you for joining us on TVC News.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
The Sport Desk. TVC Sport Desk.